Welcome back to Custodes Central. This is going to be a short episode today with a unit review focusing on Venatari. There have been a few comments asking for like a video focusing on Venatari, which kind of indicates I think not everyone is convinced that these are the best unit in the game, or not in the game, but in the Custodes Codex. So yeah, here we go. So jumping right into it. What are Venatari? If you don't know what they are a fast attack unit from Forge World. And they have a 2-up, 4-up with the Taurus Buckler. Jump pack infantry, which move 12, so that means they can benefit from area terrain rules, and importantly, they can go through breachable terrain. They get a free deep strike, so if you did want to have the potential to deep strike, you certainly can do that. And your ability to potentially deep strike can affect how your opponent picks their secondaries, because you pick your secondaries before you select your strategic reserves. Now, the main strength of the unit is actually entirely in the shooting phase, and they have a range 18, pistol 2, strength 6, -2 AP, flat 2 damage, with exploding 6s. That doesn't sound... I mean, it sounds pretty good, but it doesn't sound amazing. So you have to use this in conjunction with another stratagem for 1 CP, called Superior Fire Patterns, and this will change your gun into a pistol full profile. And that means because your Venatari have BS2, so assuming no modifiers, with your exploding 6s, this is going to average you 20 hits with 20 shots with a squad of 5. Now, if you add a shield captain just to reroll your 1s to hit, the math says you will get 23.33 hits for shooting 20 times, which is pretty nice. And you're going to wound most infantry on 3s, if not 2s. So this will give you 15.56 wounds on average, versus toughness 4, toughness 5. Against toughness 3, you're going to do even more wounds. And then if we assume your opponent saves on a 3-up, because we're AP2, we push them to 5-up. This now means we get 10.37 unsaved wounds through, and because each unsaved wound is flat 2, it's like 20.7 wounds on the unit, assuming kind of 2 wound models and no kind of damage reduction, etc. Obviously, if you're shooting into 1 wound models, the additional kind of damage is wasted, because you don't get 20 wounds through, you only get kind of 10 wounds through that are unsaved, but they have 2 damage each. So what happens if we add Blood Game Veterans along with the Shield Captain reroll 1s? And Blood Game Veterans will effectively give you an automatic wound when you get a 6 to hit. And effectively what you do with that 6 is you put it on the side, and then you have to put back in the same number of dice, because this is effectively like the explosions, which don't get the auto wound. So you'll still have to roll your exploding hits, but the original 6s to hit you just keep on the side as automatic wounds. And what that does is this pushes us up to 18.89 wounds. And again, if they're saving on 5s, we get 12.59 unsaved wounds through. And that's like 25-ish damage, which is very, very good. So this is like an obscene amount of damage effectively for like a 200 and what is it, like 265 for a unit of 5. 275 for a unit of 5. But it does cost 2 CP, but I think the CP is usually well worth it. Superior Fire Patterns should just be, you should automatically be thinking, if you take Venatari in your list, you're going to use Superior Fire Patterns every single turn until the unit either doesn't have a good target to hit, or the unit becomes too small that it's not really that good anymore. And I think probably getting down to 4 or 3 is fine. Getting down to 2 is probably, you can probably find a better place to use the stratagem, but kind of in the later turns, when units start getting really small, efficiency goes down kind of everywhere. So some interesting stats is, what will this kill on average? So if we're shooting into toughness 4, toughness 5, and we push them up to a 5-up save, and they've got 2 wounds, we're going to get like 12-ish models. If they have a 4-up save, net save, we're going to get like 9.5. And if they are toughness 4, toughness 5, and we push them to a 5-up save, and they're 3 wounds, we're going to get about 6, maybe 7. And if they are toughness 4, toughness 5 with a 4-up save after the AP, and they have 3 wounds, we're going to get about 4.6. So Obviously, it's you're going to have a bit of variance, but this is kind of like the average, so what you should kind of expect. But then, a lot of the time, you see transhuman used quite often, and especially for Marines, it's very efficient for them to use transhuman because, unlike for us, where it costs us 2 CP, it only costs them 1 as long as the unit is 5 or less models. So what that will do is that will kind of shift how many wounds we get through, but we still get 23.33 hits because we have the Shield Captain reroll and we're running Blood Game Veterans. So that will give us 3.33 additional wounds. And then after we do the winning on 4s on the 23.33 hits that we have to roll for, we end up with 15 kind of wounds that they have to roll saves on. And if they're saving on net 5 up, we get 10 through, and if they're saving on net 4 up, we get 7.5 through. So what will this kill on average? And that will still kill 10 models. If they're toughness 4, toughness 5, and we push them to a 5 up save and they have 2 wounds. We're not going to kill 20 models if they have 1 wound because we don't have that many shots that go through. It's still just going to be 10 models. But that's still pretty nice. If we push them to a 4 up save after the AP, we're going to get 7.5. If we're shooting into 3 wound models and we push them to a 5 up save, we're going to get 5. And if we're shooting into 3 wound models, pushing them to a 4 up save, we're going to get about 3 2/3, and that's just because effectively you won't kill the last model, but you'll take one of the models down to 1 on average. So what does this actually mean in game when I'm just talking about these kind of stat profiles? So if we look at what is a typical toughness 4, toughness 5 with a 3 up save and 2 wounds, we're really looking at Marines. So this is a whole squad of Marines here. And what is toughness 4, toughness 5 with a 4 up net save? And that would be, for example, Venatari shooting into Marines in light cover, or something like Vanguard vets with Storm Shields because they're 2 wounds. Toughness 4, they have the 4 up invuln, so it's the same thing. So if you manage to catch them without any buffs or any debuffs on us, etc., through something like Dents, very often just pick up an entire squad. Obviously, if you have somebody like Trajan to buff your rerolls even more, to allow you to reroll once the wound, it's going to get slightly better. And what is toughness 4, toughness 5, 3 up with 3 wounds? And this is something like Grav, Inceptors, Eradicators, that sort of profile. And here we would expect to pick up about 6 and a bit. And if they were in light cover, we would expect to pick up 4 and a bit. So this is Blade Guard are toughness 5, got a 4 up invul save, they've got 3 wounds. So this is what using 2 CP would do. And that's almost the whole squad. So that's pretty good. So what happens if the target has a 6 up feel no pain? Because very often in Marines, you're seeing Chief Apothecary with Selfless Healer, and is giving his bubble of 6 up feel no pain to quite a few units. And 6 up feel no pains don't seem like they would do that much, but they're actually really good on multi-wound models, especially when we're doing kind of multi damage per unsaved wound. So if we're shooting a 2 damage weapon into 2 wound models, it's about 70% of the time that both the wounds will go through, and like 3% of the time they'll save both of them, but that's kind of such a low percentage you don't really need to think about it. But about 28% of the time they will save exactly 1 wound. And so what this actually means is when you're shooting into a unit that has a 6 up feel no pain, 30% of the time your kill won't be clean. You'll have to spend like basically an additional unsaved wound to kill it, so you'll end up overkilling the unit usually. But that's just how it goes, because you do 2 damage, they'll save 1, so you'll have to dump another 2 damage to kill off the remaining wound. Now into 3 wound models, you're going to have to put in 2 of the unsaved shots through, so that's going to be 4 damage in total. And about 50% of the time, all 4 of them will go through. They won't make a single 6 on the feel no pain roll. 39% of the time, you will get exactly 3 wounds through out of 4. Oops, I think I was just doing some math on combinatronics, which you won't care about. And the key number that you need to think about here is is 87% of the time that you will get 3 or more wounds through. So that's kind of what you're looking for, because obviously you have to spare 1 that they are allowed to save, and you can still kill the model cleanly. However, the troublesome kind of element is about 13% of the time they will save 2 or more of the wounds on the 6-up Feel No Pain, which will mean you will have to spend like a 3rd shot instead of killing a 3-wound model with 2 shots from the Venatari gun. So what are the conclusions on the shooting output? Just keep in mind these are only averages. So Warhammer's a dice game. The variance can be very high. So, you know, if you try shooting this in a game and the unit doesn't die, don't come back in the comments saying, hey, the unit didn't die. I'm only saying what should happen on average, and obviously there's a lot of variance in this. I haven't modeled out the variance for all the shooting things. I frankly way too lazy, and I think it would be way too dry for most people to care about. This also does assume a shield captain nearby to allow reroll 1s to hit, and that you're hitting on 2, so there's nothing like dents going on or anything like that. And this assumes you're using superior fire patterns and blood game veterans. Most of the time you might not need blood game veterans, but sometimes it depends on how much you need to be sure that the unit dies, or you get really critical damage through on the unit. And if it doesn't matter that much, using superior fire patterns without using blood game veterans is absolutely fine. You get by far more use out of superior fire patterns than blood game veterans. Blood game veterans is kind of like a bonus unless you're shooting into higher toughness targets, where that additional damage does become very significant. But when you're shooting into kind of heavy infantry, toughness 4, toughness 5, blood game veterans is just kind of like a bonus thing that you don't need to do. So if you're tight on CP, just kind of forget about it and reduce your expectations slightly. And this assumes, you know, no modifiers, buffs or debuffs beyond kind of what's up here. So kind of one of the conclusions is that Feel No Pain, although you think a 6-up is just kind of very speculative, it's actually really, really strong on multi-win models to reduce our efficiency, because it's going to cause us to kind of waste damage on killing a model. And also remember that because the apothecary that's giving the Feel No Pain is very likely going to be Selfless Healer with Chief Apothecary, you know, it's going to heal any model that you don't kill outright, and then it's going to bring 1 back from the dead. So why else are Venatari good other than just their amazing shooting? So they're jetpack infantry, they have objectives secured, so that means they can breach ruins and get cover saves. And with the new changes to GT 2020, this means that they're very good at stealing objectives at the bottom of turn 5 if you went second, because, you know, they're obsec, they're really fast, they have a good gun, and their melee is not bad as well. So, you know, if you just need to kill a few models on an objective so you can flip it, you know, Venatari are a really good unit to do so, along with bikes. They're infantry, so they can raise banners if you need to. They can deep strike. They're fast, so they can help you with engage on all fronts if you pick that up as a secondary on some of the missions where you need to move a little bit from your deployment zone to get onto the objective on turn 1. It's a good unit for that. And they can provide tanglefoot bubbles for your units that can't tanglefoot themselves. So I'm thinking bikes and vehicles. And additionally, because they're infantry, they can Auspex scan. And Auspex scan is always really good. And in addition, kind of one of the things, it's not related to them being infantry or anything like that. But when they overwatch, because they get exploding 6s, it makes it kind of a more efficient to overwatch with than most other units. So it's got a good volume of shots and attacks in melee, especially if you take the Misericordia. So if you're facing Horde, it's usually everything is a bit overkill against Horde, because the quality is too much versus what you're kind of fighting. It's not the most efficient thing, but they can do that role as well. But generally, they provide just a really good mobile shooting unit for everything you don't want to charge. So if there's like a big Blade Guard blob with a Judicar and you can't kind of access, you know, you can't get in a place to shoot the Judicar or charge just a Judicar or something like that, you just shoot the Blade Guard instead, because that's not a fight that you should really be looking to take unless you're absolutely forced to, or just like a super blendy unit. You know, you just don't want to be in combat with it. You'd much rather just shoot it. Or if you can't get into charge range because it's in an earlier turn, you know, you're a mobile unit, so you can move 12 and then you've got 18-inch range. So that's like a 30-inch threat range from where the unit starts in the turn. So this is all very good. So it's really, really good at basically killing everything apart from -1 damage reduction units, and that's things like dreadnoughts and some greater demons which have the trait. And I'm sure we're going to see kind of more of this creeping up in 2021, but we'll kind of see. So they're really good at killing heavy infantry, but they can also double up into killing vehicles and monsters. So I'm going to recycle a slide from a previous episode where we looked at what can Venatari kill. This time assuming no rerolls, but using superior fire patterns and blood game veterans. And here we're definitely using blood game veterans because we're looking at what happens when we're trying to shoot kind of tough targets. So when we use both the stratagems and we don't care if it's toughness 7 or toughness 8, you'll see something like, let's say, a Lehman Russ, which we push to a 5 up, we'll get 11.83 wounds through on average. And then obviously if we have a shield captain nearby for the rerolls, we'll plink it over the 12 in most cases. Something like a Rhino, very similar, toughness 7, 5, we push it to a 5 up save, we'll kill that no problem. Something like a Keeper of Secrets, that's going to be, I think that's toughness 7, it's just got an 8 5 up save. That's again, with the shield captain reroll, you're probably going to kill it. So although you don't tend to think of Venatari as a tank destroyer or like a monster killer, once you use these two stratagems, and it is kind of CP expensive and you don't have the best range, but it can get that done in a pinch, certainly. And because the Custodes army doesn't have that many units, you really want units that can double up or triple up in terms of the roles that they play in your army. So this is why I think they're just really good units. So they're extremely, extremely point efficient in the shooting phase. There are some other units in the game that will, get loads of their points back in the combat phase, something like Repentia from Sisters of Battle, for example. But there aren't that many units that are super, super efficient in the shooting phase, other than kind of like Eradicators, something like that, or Inceptors even. So in our codex, I think Venatari in shooting are one of the best, if not just the best unit in terms of points efficiency. So if you think about most units in the codex, they're very, very unlikely to get even their points back in one turn of shooting. But Venatari can do this pretty frequently. And even if they don't, they get pretty close to it. So this is basically what makes them amazing, because, if you deep strike them down and you get to shoot them at a nice target, bang, you've immediately got your points back. And, anything beyond that is effectively just a bonus. And although you shouldn't really think about kind of points efficiency all the time, you should be thinking about what roles that your army needs and what your win conditions are, etc. Like putting that to one side, it is basically just amazing being able to delete a unit that you don't want to deal with for the rest of the game, and then have that do something else, because it doesn't die immediately, it doesn't even trade, it just kills it, and then now they have to put firepower into killing you off. So it's a very flexible unit, can carry out many roles that are needed. So if you recall, it's fast, it's infantry, it can deep strike, etc., all that kind of stuff. It can kill a wide range of targets, everything apart from -1 damage. I would suggest to take a unit of 5 so that you benefit from stratagems without taking the blast penalty, because the maximum you can take is 6, but once you take 6, you have to pay 2 CP for superior fire patterns, and I don't think it's worth paying the extra CP for one additional person to shoot twice. I think Misericordia are a good place to put spare points. If your army's got 15 points spare, I think this is a very safe place to put them. And the other cool thing is, don't forget to fire the pistols in combat. So one of the things I think Venatari are really good at, because they're fast, you'll be able to set up a wrap quite easily. So a really good candidate for this is something like a transport or a tank, a tank with blast weapons, because obviously once you get through the Overwatch, if they choose to do it, they can't fire their blast weapons in combat anymore. So you can try point something, you can pin it against the wall, you can pin it against the edge of the map. Now, if you only charge it with your bucklers and your Misericordias, you're quite unlikely to kill something like a transport in one round of combat. And if you do wrap it and it doesn't do like a desperate breakout stratagem, or it doesn't or it doesn't have fly, or it just doesn't have the movement to fully get away because you've bracketed it. This means they can't now fire into your Venatari unit. You could get charged by something else, but it really reduces the firepower that they can take, because once they're locked in combat, you can't really be shot generally by most armies unless they have some special rule. But what this does mean is, back when it's in your turn, you can now shoot your pistols in combat, and that will give you a good chance of killing the transport, so that you're free to charge something else in your turn. Or if your pistols don't quite finish it off, you probably will be able to finish it off with your first round of charges, your second round of shooting, and then your second round of combat again. So that probably will free you up again, which will be nice for the next turn. But if you need to park your Venatari somewhere so they don't get completely shot off the board, this is always a good kind of option to keep in mind. So as I said, bit of a short video today, but I hope this is helpful and kind of helps you change your mind about Venatari if you were kind of sitting on the fence. Strongly recommend just proxy some models in, just try it with the rules, and I don't think you'll look back. Anyway, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe if you liked the video, and comment on any other kind of videos that you would like to see in the future, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks very much.